Yeah, I'm Smedes York, and I've enjoyed talking about some history and things I remember. And my first memory goes back to when I lived on Maiden Lane. And Maiden Lane, dead-end street that's off Hillsborough Street, right across from the bell tower. It's still there, still Maiden Lane. It's not connected up to any other streets, but my dad bought that house I looked it up, or we had it looked up, and I think it closed on July 1st, 1944. Well, I was born on February 22nd, 1941, so I was three and a half, and your memory begins to form when you're 3 to 4 to 5, and so I have a lot of memories of living on Maiden Lane. I have an older brother, Jimmy, who was obviously there, but we did a lot of things. So many memories. My grandmother lived on Groveland Avenue in Cameron Park, and so as a 4 and 5 year old, I know that I didn't live there past the time I was 5 because I moved to Craig Street in 1946 when I was, say, 5 and a half. But I would walk to my grandmother's house by myself on Hillsborough Street, and there was a jewelry store there, Weatherman's Jewelry, that was there for years. There was a barber shop there on the corner where David Mayo's restaurant is. That was the drugstore. That was the corner drugstore. It had the tile floor. With the counter, you could go get a soda. That was classic drugstore that you really don't see anymore. But I would be able to walk from my house at Maiden Lane, 13 Maiden Lane, over to my grandmother's house. And I also had a yellow scooter, as I recall, it was like a bicycle. It had a rubber chain, so to speak. It wasn't a metal chain, but I could pump that over there, and I would go see her. And I was a little bit of a young entrepreneur. I got into cutting grass, and my dad bought me a lawnmower. I remember when he came home one day, and he had a yellow lawnmower that was in the trunk of his car. I still remember he couldn't close the trunk. Had that lawnmower, so I would cut grass on the street. We raised rabbits and sold rabbits. As I recall, we sold them for $1, which even today that sounds like a pretty good price. Anyway, we sold rabbits, and then I would go down and sell comic books, used comic books on Hillsborough Street, sit on the corner, but nobody wanted the comic books. They were just a kid down there selling comic books for a dime or a nickel or whatever I sold them for. And so I would sell those. But again, it was right across from the bell tower. The house has been, and I haven't been back in it, but it's been falling. I guess, well, I know it's been renovated to some extent, but as I recall the floor plan, there was a bathroom in the middle of the house that there were 3 doors that you could get into the bathroom from 3 different directions. So I've seen bathrooms you can get in from 2 different directions. But again, the Second World War was still going on, and I remember playing with my brother, and next door to us was the Charlie Douglas. He was a realtor for many years in Raleigh. His son, Donald Douglas. We would play war, and I was younger than they were, so it made me be the German, in terms of the Second World War. Down the street, the Bacons lived, Zach Bacon, who's still very, very active. So it was a different time, but at the same token, quieter, calmer city, but at the same token, you had this major war that was ending, and now was going on, and then ending about the time we moved over to Craig Street. So I think they were fond memories going back. Of course, it was the classic 50s type family where my mother was a homemaker and my dad was working. Again, in the 40s, he hadn't quite started the development of Cameron Village, but was building houses. And during the war, he had worked at Sherry Point, and we'd moved around several times. So a lot of fond memories of living on Maiden Lane. I remember so many things. One thing I remember that I buried some treasure in the backyard, and it wasn't major treasure, but it was things I thought were important. Maybe a little bit of money, maybe a little bracelet or something, but I couldn't find it when we left. I tried to dig it up and I couldn't find it. Another memory, I mentioned Weatherman's Jewelers, but I would go down to Weatherman's Jewelers and I would buy, with money I earned, comic statues, like Popeye and Jigs, and these little wooden statues that they had, and I'd buy those for my mother and bring those back. So a lot of fun memories. Different time, but Raleigh has changed a lot, but in many ways it's better, and in ways it's nice to reflect back on the past.